welcome to our alums chat here at the MQ. And it's wonderful to see so many bright faces and bright names here in the audience. Today I have with me Julia Pataky. She is an Austrian Fulbright student who went to the US in 2018, actually, in 2018. So it was before the COVID-19 crisis, where you went to Washington, D.C. and did your master's at the American University's School of International Service in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, an amazing experience. And it's great that you are now back and can tell us a bit about your journey. I also have one actually or two secrets to share, because I know that your favorite coffee is a double espresso and you also like a melange. So let's share coffee today with everyone here in this kind of nice coffee break. And with this, I hand over to you and ask you the first question. Just tell me a bit about yourself and share a bit about your experience with the audience here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me and for organizing this. I'm very excited to use this platform to share my experiences. Um, so I'm originally from Vienna, and I kind of have a bicultural Austrian-Hungarian family background that kind of really shaped my childhood and exposed me, to different cultures and the importance of cultural mediation from a super early age. And that also kind of shaped my interest in foreign languages, which is essentially why I ended up doing a high school year in Michigan. So that was my first time in the US. When I was 15, I went to like a really small town in Michigan, and I just kind of fell in love with, the US education system and US culture, and just got super interested and had this urge to want to return to the US in this student capacity once again. And so then I came back to Austria, finished my high school diploma, and then studied translation and interpreting actually for my bachelor's degree. And then ended up applying for Fulbright and pursuing my master's in DC, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. When you think about your experience, how did you find out initially about Fulbright Austria?
So it's a funny story. I kind of feel like, the answer is I didn't find out about Fulbright. Fulbright kind of found me in a way. Um, it's true because I first found out about Fulbright while I was on my exchange semester during my Erasmus in Brussels. And I saw in the Facebook community group from a university that a student had talked about her experience while she was an FLTA in the US. And so that was like my first exposure to what the Fulbright program is. And then I came back to Austria, and I just walked to class one day and saw a poster at my university. And that's when I decided, okay, I think I'm going to learn more about that. And I went to Bestmesse and learned about all the different programs and all the different opportunities. And then I decided I'm definitely applying. So yeah, that's my story.
Great. So we are happy that Fulbright found you,
Yeah.
that you joined the program. Um, so when you look back at your experience and the application process, how was it like at the beginning?
Well, there's like a couple of different steps, I think, to the application process. It's definitely a very long process. I applied in May 2017, and then I went to the US in August of the following year. So it's a little more than a year, the whole application process, and started with the written application, and then continued with the interview phase. And then I had the opportunity to kind of rework or adjust my application materials after being selected, and then decide on the 4 universities that I wanted to apply to. And then it was just a long wait once again to hear back from the universities, which was super, suspenseful, to finally learn where you got accepted or what kind of opportunities you'll have, and then deciding where you're going. So it's a long process, but it's also a really rewarding process, because throughout the process, I just reflected so much on my study objectives and my personal objectives, that I was able to kind of strengthen my belief in what I'm doing, and just kind of committing to this mission of promoting mutual understanding along the way. So it's definitely a rewarding process.
That's good that you use this process, this time for the good. It was not just a waiting time; it was a time which helped you for the next steps of your adventure. So, how
Definitely.
did you prepare for that adventure?
Um, well, there was like kind of two levels of preparation. On the one hand, the all of the administrative things that you have to get in order before you go, but then at the same time also the personal things that you kind of need to take care of in a way. So I remember that Strobel,
Mm.
what was it, the enrichment seminar, or the short weekend that we went to Strobel, was really, really helpful, because it gave you the opportunity to connect with other Fulbrighters, and also meet your counterparts, the Americans who came to Austria. And we really used that also as a way of exchanging ideas and talking about all sorts of stuff, like what's the best phone plan to get, and what insurance to get, and all of that administrative stuff. But then again, it's a weird situation, because on the one hand, you're super excited to
Mhm.
start your journey and come to the US, but at the same time you also realize that you won't see your family for a long time, and that you won't be with your friends for a long time. So that was definitely also important to me, to spend time with my family as much as I can before leaving. And yeah, so that's basically how I prepared.
Yeah, I think that's what is what the whole thing is all about getting connected with U.S. and Austrian Fulbrighters, and get build up friendships, and also to somehow um, let go from where you're coming from. So leave the comfort zone and
Yeah.
enter in a new experience. So, what was your first impression when you arrived in USA? So, what stood out for you?
Well, I went to Washington D.C., and so I previously had only been there as a tourist for a couple of days. So coming back after, I think it was 8 years since the last time I was there, um, was really exciting. And kind of I came to the city, and it was just so, on the one hand, overwhelming, but at the same time also just super exciting to see all of the different organizations, whether that's international organizations or embassies. Like, DC is just an extremely diverse city, and there are so many different people from so many different walks of life, and to be able to just really explore all of that diversity. And it was also reflected at my university, because my program was extremely international, and there were so many different people. So it was really cool to just experience that. And yeah, I was really impressed, and I love the city. I hope I can uh, go back to visit someday, after COVID is over, or after things are a little bit easier in terms of traveling. Yeah.
Yeah, currently it's not so easy to travel to the US or from the US to Austria. Everybody who's currently in the program will appreciate that. Um, so now we are now we are entering an area where I think everybody in the audience wants to know more about. So what did you do as a Fulbrighter in the US? So why did you go there, and what what actually did you do there?
Okay, that's a really good question. So originally, I was actually also drawn to the FLTA program, but when I found out that there was also the Fulbright student program, I decided to apply for that, and so I decided to apply for master's programs in public and cultural diplomacy, because my previous education, like I had already mentioned, kind of prepared me for that and sort of brought me to that point where I really wanted to pursue my continued education in that field. And so I actually did my master's in international and intercultural communication at the School of International Service. And while I did my master's, I also kind of pursued research in this field and, focused all of my research interests on the history of US public diplomacy, because the concept really comes from the US and has, evolved ever since the Second World War, and also the role of language in public diplomacy. Those are things that I really focused on and that I did a lot of research on while I was there. And yeah, to go back to your second questions, why I applied, I think for me it was just, this really this urge of coming back and being a student again in the US, because I had just known that the uniqueness of the education system in the US, and then of course the 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 culture and the country itself have just always been super interesting to me, and so that's why I really wanted to come back. Yeah.
Wonderful, and I think it's great to see that Fulbright offered that experience to you. Um, Now that you finished your Fulbright experience, I mean, you cannot say that the Fulbright experience is finished because it's never finished. But since you are now back, so to say, yeah, and you're continuing your Fulbright experience, what are your next professional goals here?
Well, I would really like to continue to work in cultural and public diplomacy. That's definitely the field that I want to, dedicate my career to. After going through this whole Fulbright experience, I just realized myself how important public diplomacy is, and how what an important part it is of every country's foreign policy. And so that's really what I continue to hope to do in the future. Yeah, and like you said, the Fulbright experience never ends. So I also hope to find other ways, to kind of bring Austrians and Americans together, and also the Fulbright community in Austria. That would be great.
So great. And now since we have you here, and I'm sure we have many people in the audience who want to know more about, what advice you want to give to a new Fulbrighter, I think that would be helpful for our community. So having been a Fulbright applicant, having been a Fulbright grantee, now being an alum, what advice would you give to the next generation?
I think most importantly, start early. I think it's super important to have enough time to really think about and reflect on your study objectives and your personal objectives, and what you want to do in the US, and how those objectives kind of align with the Fulbright mission and the overall mission of promoting mutual understanding. For me, that was really important because I really felt that role as a cultural ambassador abroad. And for me, that was super important. And coming into the US, you also kind of become a part of this whole Fulbright network and meet so many different Fulbrighters from so many different countries as well. So I think that reflecting on that goal is really important, and trying to, capture that spirit also in your application in a way. Um, and and yeah, I think that, when I think about the history of the program, and I think one of Senator Fulbright's quotes was something like, having people who understand your thought is much greater security than having another submarine. It really goes to show like the importance of cultural empathy, and also the role it plays, and how much more important it's becoming. So I think that reflecting on, that kind of mission is just super important in the application process. And that's definitely an advice I would give to anyone who's planning on applying for the program.
Wonderful. Thank you for summarizing our mission so nicely. And I'm sure people from next generation of applicants will be really, really happy about hearing from you what what they have to prepare for. So since connecting with our community is so important for us, I now want to open the discussion here to the questions which our community has, and ask Mitch to share them so that you can answer them here in the podium.
Perfect.
Hey, Julia. The first question from our community is, how did you learn Hungarian? And what advice would you give our community for learning other languages in general?
Thank you for the question. So I always like to joke that I'm the reincarnation of the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy, because my dad is from Hungary and my mom's from Austria. Unfortunately, though, I did not grow up speaking both languages, but it has always played such an important role in my life. And so when I was 18 or thereabouts, I decided, I kind of want to identify with that part of my heritage, or just that kind of, that's also part of my identity. And so I decided I want to learn Hungarian. And obviously, as you grow older, it becomes harder to learn the language. But I had kind of, that sound in my ear. In a way, I kind of heard the language and was able to understand a lot. So I started to take classes and gradually became better, and then ended up going to Budapest for a year to really perfect it, which kind of leads me, to the second part of the question. I think that immersing yourself in the country where the language is spoken is probably the best way to learn a language. I know that's hard in COVID times, but I think also something that's helped me a lot is to, listen and really try to practice your listening skills by listening to podcasts or watching movies or whatever it may be. I think that really helps you to pick up, subconsciously on sentence structures or idioms, or, just certain expressions. So that's definitely also an important part. Yeah.
I have another question from the community. What was your training like at the Goethe-Institut in Missouri?
It was, so I came to Missouri after finishing my master's degree, and I basically graduated right in the middle of or now I guess we can say it was the beginning of the pandemic, in May 2020. And then I was super lucky to find this position that I was able to pursue with my post-academic training opportunity as a Fulbrighter. And so I came to Missouri, and it was obviously very hard for us at the beginning, because everybody was new to, the whole world of virtual programming. But the main focus of my work there was cultural advocacy work between Germany and the US. And so we did kind of different types of programs. And even though it was challenging at first, I think it was super rewarding for us when we managed to, find new ways of doing virtual programming, and even finding some COVID safe ways of doing a little bit of, personal or semi-personal programming as well. So it was a really rewarding time. I'm super grateful that I was able to go despite the pandemic. And it was also really cool to experience the Midwest, because I mean, I was in Michigan before, but that was a little bit even further in the Midwest. And so that was really cool to see. And for anyone who loves barbecue, Missouri is a great place to be, or Kansas City is a great place to be. And I even, brought home some of my favorite barbecue sauce. So anyone who needs tips on barbecue in Kansas City can come to me.
I'm sure this will be the next questions.
Another question from the audience. How did you prepare for your studies, and how did you prepare for the United States?
Well, I think I sort of already answered that before. Yeah, I think it's really important, you know, to get everything ready in terms of the administrative things, getting everything in order, but also trying to talk to as many people as possible, maybe people who have previously done your program or people who went to the same university can be super helpful as well to hear about their experiences. And then, of course, I was actually also really lucky because when I went, my university had a buddy program that allowed me to sign up, and I was matched with an American that we kind of like shared some interests. She previously went to Europe and had studied here, and so I was matched with her, and we were, you know, kind of that really helped me to become a part of the university community as well. So yeah, trying to be open as much as possible, and you know, finding ways of becoming a part of the new community, I think is super helpful.
We have another question from the community. What do you think is most important for one who wants to apply? Good grades in your previous studies, your work experience, or maybe the experience that you might have going abroad, like the Erasmus semester or something else?
It's a hard question, but I think that there is no one thing that stands out. I think that the overall, you know, package is important. I think that grades aren't always, you know, the most important thing. For example, at my university that I ended up at, it was, I think what was most important was actually the extracurricular stuff that you had previously done, or you know, maybe volunteer positions that you have held, or other leadership experiences, but also just showing your interest in the program, and really identifying with what the university is focusing on and offering in terms of coursework. But I mean, it's a balance between many things. I think, you know, grades of course have some importance, and then also the standardized test scores that you will have to eventually get as well, and yeah, your recommendations, I think, if they're necessary. So it's a mix, it's a combination.
We have one more question from the community. What would you consider the most important thing that you learned during your Fulbright experience?
No pressure. Well, there was one experience where I was lucky to go to the Capitol in DC in 2019 for the unveiling of the new Fulbright logo. And one of the speakers there, she was talking about, you know, the importance of the Fulbright program, and she mentioned a quote that really stuck with me. And she said, "You can't be what you can't see." And that really resonated with me and stuck with me. And I think it really speaks to the added value of the Fulbright program, because it really encourages you to, you know, have an open mind and always learn and grow, and not be afraid of diving into new things, or things that you know haven't previously considered doing for whatever reason. And so I think it's really true, this simple saying that if you can't or you know, you don't dare to picture a better future or whatever it is that you want to achieve, then you're probably less likely to have the faith in yourself of doing that as well. So you really can't be what you can't see. So keep an open mind. And I would say that that's definitely something that I've kept, you know, near me since my Fulbright experience. And I consider one of my biggest learnings, yes.
Wonderful, thank you. I mean, you can't be what you can't see highlights why it's important that we send you basically to the United States. You saw with your own eyes your opportunities and the opportunities you have there and now have here. So with this, we hope that this encourages also others to take the same, same steps and go to the United States to learn about what they can be, to see what they can be. And they have a good mentor now in you, sharing all the important steps which are important for them. So use the time, be well prepared. Thank you for sharing this. Time flies, so we are now coming to an end. But with this, I also want to highlight that it was wonderful to have you all here and share the coffee with all of you. It's great that so many of our alums not only share advice, but also share their time and give back to the community and help the next generation to take the step and travel to the United States. So with this, thank you. And I hope everybody joins us for the next alums chat, which will be on March 9th. So see you all for the next alums chat. Until then, bye-bye and all the best.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.